The holographic transmission cast a pale glow over the council chamber, illuminating faces twisted in shock and anger. The images had spread like wildfire through every human settlement across the stars. Recorded from the depths of the Galactic Empire's flagship, they depicted rows of human prisoners, shackled and broken. Soldiers, medics, and engineers, all lined up in containment cells that pulsed with an alien energy. Then, with a horrifying crackle, the fields intensified, consuming the prisoners in emerald light until nothing remained but ashes. Admiral Rebecca Thorne felt the weight of silence pressing down on her like a physical force. "How recent?" she asked, her voice sharp yet betraying the tremor beneath. General Ethan Voss, standing stiffly by her side, clenched his jaw. 2 weeks. Their ships intercepted the evacuation at Carina Delta. Survivors smuggled the footage out just hours ago. He paused, his voice hardening. These weren't rogue captains. This was sanctioned, systematic. Rebecca slammed her palm onto the polished metal table, the sound reverberating through the chamber. Around her, the most powerful figures in humanity's fractured leadership, military commanders, corporate heads, and colony representatives, sat in stunned silence. Each one wore the haunted look of someone grappling with the sheer scale of the atrocity. The Galactic Empire's decision to execute human prisoners violated every treaty governing interstellar warfare. Worse, it struck at humanity's very identity, the hope they clung to as a fledgling force in a vast and indifferent galaxy. High Chancellor Elena Marlowe broke the silence, her voice calculated and firm. Every colony is ablaze with protests. Earth, Mars, Europa, all demanding retribution. Civilian leaders are demanding action. Admiral Thorne. They're tired of feeling powerless. Rebecca forced herself to meet Elena's piercing gaze. "Then we give them strength," she said. "We strike back, hard enough for the Empire to understand that humanity will not be cowed. Hard enough for them to bleed." Ethan leaned forward, his steel-gray eyes locking with Rebecca's. "And what about the risks? The Empire doesn't lose wars. Their fleets dwarf ours. Their weapons are superior." Rebecca interrupted. "That's what they've always thought. That's why they slaughtered our people. They think we'll kneel." She stood, her tone resonant now, addressing everyone in the room. "They've mistaken survival for submission." Murmurs rippled through the chamber as Rebecca's words took root. Behind her controlled exterior, an old wound ached. She remembered her brother, an engineer aboard a colony freighter obliterated in an earlier Empire skirmish. It was one of countless small provocations humanity had endured while clinging to the fragile peace. The Carina Delta massacre, however, wasn't just another slight. It was a declaration. Dr. Eitan Lang, one of Earth's foremost scientists, spoke from the far end of the table, his voice measured but heavy. "If we retaliate, there's no turning back. Do we have the resources for an extended war? Have we unlocked enough of the recovered Empire technology to match them in open combat?" Rebecca met his gaze. "The ARC project has progressed further than we've let on. Humanity's greatest strength has never been numbers or brute force. It's adaptability. We don't mimic, we innovate." Elena folded her hands and nodded thoughtfully. "If you're suggesting we reveal the ARC, it's a gamble." "A calculated one," Rebecca replied. "But first, we need unity. No separate agendas, no factional squabbling. If we act, humanity acts as one. The Empire will regret underestimating us." Ethan exhaled sharply, tension thickening his voice. "Even if we secure a few victories, they won't let up. They'll burn whole planets before admitting defeat." "And what do you propose, General?" Rebecca shot back, her tone pointed but not unkind. He hesitated before answering, each word deliberate. "That we make our statement so loud, so devastating, that they can't afford to retaliate." A tense silence followed. It wasn't just anger that fueled the room. It was desperation. Everyone here knew the stakes, survival or extinction. Rebecca broke the stillness. Then we move swiftly. Their orbital stations at Sigma Draconis. Take them out. Show the Empire what human resolve looks like. Covert or open engagement? Ethan asked. She gritted her teeth. Open. Let them know why this is happening. High Chancellor Elena's voice sliced through the heated atmosphere. I'll need the Council to ratify this war. The vote will pass, but we need to manage the narrative. If we escalate, we can't hesitate. Agreed, Rebecca said. But we lead with our actions, not our justifications. A single decisive strike, and the galaxy will know that humanity isn't prey. We fight until the Empire's leadership understands the price of arrogance. Ethan glanced down at the holo display, his fingers curling into fists as the grim footage replayed in his mind. We start preparing now. They've set the terms. We'll answer. Rebecca stood taller, a steely determination overtaking her grief. As the room hummed with the weight of inevitable war, her voice carried an edge that left no room for doubt. We make them regret Carina Delta. No prisoners. The room erupted in grim assent, each figure rising with a sense of purpose. Whatever humanity had been before this moment was gone. Together, they stepped into the shadow of war, resolved to make their vengeance unforgettable. Rebecca Thorne stood on the command deck of the Erebus, humanity's first warship equipped with prototype Arctech. The darkened bridge hummed with barely restrained energy, its sleek surfaces dotted with consoles displaying streams of tactical data. In the vast emptiness beyond the viewport, the Sigma Draconis system loomed, a prize the Empire had fortified for centuries. This stronghold was untouchable, or so the aliens believed. They don't even know we're here, Commander Aiden Crow muttered, his voice tinged with grim satisfaction. The young officer stood beside Rebecca, eyes fixed on the tactical holomap. Icons representing the Empire's orbital stations circled a barren, sulfur-choked planet. They will soon, Rebecca replied, her tone steel. Her gaze was locked forward, her hands gripping the armrest of her command chair. Around her, the crew worked with tense precision, each movement carrying the weight of what they were about to unleash. This would be humanity's first direct strike, and failure was not an option. Captain Dane, she called out, addressing the veteran helmsman. The grizzled officer turned, his expression resolute. Hold position here until the Vanguard disables their sensors. Once they go blind, we hit their central command node with everything we've got. Yes, Admiral. Dane replied without hesitation, turning back to the controls. Rebecca leaned closer to Aiden. How's our infiltration team? They've just breached the orbital perimeter. Recon confirms their cloaking field is holding. Aiden hesitated, then added, they're taking a hell of a gamble down there. Rebecca met his eyes. We all are. Far below, Lieutenant Kaya Vega felt the ground tremble beneath her boots as her squad crept along the underside of an enemy maintenance corridor. The magnetic clamps on their suits kept them anchored, but the suffocating weight of their mission pressed harder than the planet's gravity. If detected, the Empire's orbital garrison would vaporize them before they could deploy the disabling charge. Status, Kaya whispered, her voice barely audible over the squad's shared comm. Charge set and armed, Corporal Hassan whispered back, tapping at the console mounted on his forearm. Once this goes, their long-range comms and targeting will be fried. Kaya nodded, her chest tightening with anticipation. She glanced at her squad, 5 faces reflected in the dim green of their helmet displays. She could see the same fear etched in their eyes, but beneath it burned the fire of determination. They all knew the cost of failure, and every one of them was prepared to pay the ultimate price. Detonation on my mark, she said, steadying her breath. 3, 2. The explosion rippled through the vacuum of space, a silent but devastating blossom of light that rippled across the orbital station's sleek surface. Kaya and her squad, shielded by the ship's understructure, scrambled to a rendezvous point as alarms erupted around them. We're clear, she barked. Admiral Thorne, the station's blind. Engage now. On the Erebus, Rebecca felt the moment like a current charging through the air. "All units," she said, her voice cutting through the bridge like a blade. "Launch the assault." The fleet emerged from its cloaked position like a predator pouncing on its prey. Human warships, smaller and sleeker than the massive dreadnoughts of the Empire, surged forward with blistering speed. They released volleys of high-yield plasma torpedoes and kinetic warheads, each shot meticulously aimed to cripple. Aiden Crow barked orders from his station, his fingers dancing over controls. Priority targets disabled, station defenses offline. Orbital fleet mobilizing in response. "They're reacting slower than we predicted," Rebecca observed. She wasn't sure if it was arrogance or confusion on the part of the Empire, but she wasn't about to waste the opportunity. "Redirect auxiliary units to the second station," she ordered. "Ensure nothing escapes. We can't let their reinforcements mobilize." A sudden tremor shook the Erebus. Dane called out from his console, "Enemy fire incoming. Their secondary platforms are deploying long-range batteries." Rebecca's hands tightened on the armrest. "Raise shields to maximum and focus fire on those batteries. Push through." On the viewport, flashes of light and streaks of energy turned the void into a chaos of explosions. Empire vessels lumbered into position, their larger size making them easy targets for the agile human ships. Rebecca saw one particularly massive destroyer attempt to flank them, but it was vaporized before it could fire a single shot. "Enemy fleets in disarray," Aiden said, a note of triumph slipping into his tone. "They weren't expecting this." "That's their mistake," Rebecca replied. She leaned forward, her gaze fixed on the central station coming into view. It was a colossal structure bristling with weapons and command towers, the crown jewel of the Sigma Draconis system. "This ends now," she said. "Target their central reactor. Deliver the final blow." As the human fleet concentrated fire, the central station began to buckle, its reinforced hull splitting under the relentless barrage. Rebecca watched as the reactor core overloaded, a catastrophic failure visible even from the Erebus. The explosion consumed the station, taking with it the Empire's central command node for the region. Rebecca felt a grim satisfaction as the light faded, leaving behind nothing but debris. Humanity had struck its first true blow, and it was devastating. "Status?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. "Minimal casualties on our side," Aiden reported. "The enemy fleet is scattered. Survivors are retreating to deep space." Rebecca stood, the weight of the moment settling in her chest. This was more than just a victory. It was a statement. The Empire would never see humanity the same way again. "They'll retaliate." Elena's voice came through the comm from Earth. "You've bought us time, Admiral, but they'll come back with everything they have." Rebecca's lips pressed into a thin line. "Let them. We've shown them what humans are capable of. Next time, they'll think twice before underestimating us." As the fleet regrouped, the adrenaline of battle began to fade, leaving behind a grim realization. This was only the beginning. The ruins of the Epsilon colony stretched across the horizon, the charred skeletons of buildings casting jagged shadows under the system's dying sun. Admiral Rebecca Thorne surveyed the devastation from the command module of a planetary dropcraft. Below her, columns of armored transports rolled through streets littered with debris and shattered lives. The Empire's retaliation for Sigma Draconis had been swift and unforgiving, a scorched earth campaign that left little behind but ash. "We lost over 4 million here," said Commander Aiden Crow, standing beside her, his voice hollow. Civilian evacuation fell apart after the orbital shields collapsed. "The bastards came to make an example of us." Rebecca clenched her jaw. "They think they can break us. But this," she gestured at the destruction visible through the viewport, "will do the opposite." She turned sharply, her voice rising. "Prepare the war councils. We're moving forward with Phase 2. This war ends now, beneath the Empire's capital world. The heart of its rule beat in an underground metropolis protected by layers of planetary shields and miles of fortified infrastructure. Known as Corythian Prime, it was the invulnerable command center from which the Empire dictated its iron will. But humanity's fleet now hung at its doorstep. The combined human armada dwarfed anything they had brought to the battlefield before. Hundreds of ships bristling with arc-enhanced weaponry surrounded the Empire's crown jewel. Every crew member knew the cost of what they were about to attempt and the stakes if they failed. On the bridge of the Erebus, Rebecca's eyes moved across the battle map with ruthless precision. Corythian Prime's formidable defenses glowed red on the display, pulsating with energy as swarms of enemy fighters mobilized. In contrast, humanity's fleet blazed with determination, a sea of cobalt blue streaks breaking formation to surround the planet. "This is humanity's line in the sand," Rebecca declared. Her words, broadcast across the fleet, carried the weight of their collective anger, grief, and resilience. "They underestimated us at Sigma Draconis. Now, we deliver the finishing blow. For Carina Delta, for Epsilon Colony, for every life they've taken," Admiral Aiden said, looking up from his console. "We've detected an unexpected surge in their defensive grid. They've modified their shielding since our last analysis." "Then we'll adjust," Rebecca said sharply. "Activate the disruptor array. Punch a hole, even if it drains every ounce of our power." While chaos erupted in orbit, Lieutenant Kaya Vega and her infiltration team once again found themselves in hostile territory. Having deployed via stealth shuttles, her squad now crawled through a network of underground maintenance tunnels beneath Corythian Prime. Their objective: disable the Empire's central AI command system. Without it, the planet's defenses would falter, leaving it vulnerable to bombardment. "Status?" Kaya hissed, her voice barely audible over the static-laden comms. 2 minutes from the core," Hassan replied, his steps cautious as he led the way. "If we're lucky, their proximity sensors haven't been recalibrated since Sigma." Luck wasn't a concept Kaya trusted, not anymore. She could feel the tension of her squad, even in silence. The death toll of the war loomed over all of them. None of them spoke it aloud, but they all knew the probability. They wouldn't survive this mission. "Stay focused," Kaya ordered, gripping her rifle tightly. "Whatever happens, we finish the job." They reached the command core just as alarms echoed faintly in the distance. The towering pillar of alien machinery pulsed with light, its rhythmic hum nearly drowning out the growing thrum of approaching footsteps. "They know we're here," Kaya muttered. "Hassan, plant the charges. Everyone else, defensive positions." The squad formed a tight perimeter, their weapons trained on the tunnel's dark entrance. The first wave of Empire soldiers arrived in a blur of silvery armor, firing precision energy bolts that crackled against the squad shields. Kaya gritted her teeth and fired back, the sound of her pulse rifle reverberating in her ears. "Charges set," Hassan called. 30 seconds to detonation. "Fall back," Kaya shouted, providing cover fire as her team began retreating into an adjacent shaft. She lingered for a heartbeat, ensuring Hassan was clear, before sprinting after the others. A deafening explosion followed moments later, the shockwave knocking them all to the ground. "AI command is offline," Hassan said through gasps of breath. Mission accomplished. Above, on the Erebus, Aiden watched as the Empire's defensive grid faltered, massive sections flickering and disappearing entirely. "The core's down," he announced. "Our teams on the ground came through." Rebecca didn't respond immediately. Her focus was on the swirling enemy fleet, now exposed but fighting desperately to protect their capital. "Redirect power to the main cannon," she ordered. "Target their central command tower and fire at will." The Erebus's massive plasma cannon powered up, a piercing blue glow illuminating the void. With a deafening roar, the weapon discharged, a beam of unimaginable energy piercing through Corythian Prime's remaining defenses and slamming into the planet's surface. The Empire's capital buckled under the assault. Its command tower collapsed in a plume of fire and debris, cutting off communications and shattering the chain of command. Across the battlefield, Empire ships began retreating, their cohesion shattered. As silence fell over the battlefield, Rebecca surveyed the destruction. For the first time in living memory, the Empire's dominance had been broken. "Admiral, the Empire fleet is retreating," Aiden said, his voice quieter now, almost disbelieving. Rebecca nodded slowly, exhaling the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. But at what cost? Her question hung in the air, unanswered, as the Erebus hovered over the smoldering remains of Corythian Prime. Below, the devastation mirrored the charred ruins of humanity's colonies. They had won the day, but the scars left by this war would never fully heal.